The silver tray arrived at precisely 8:17 p.m. I know because I watched the numbers change on my phone as the room service attendant knocked on the door adjacent to mine. A door I'd never touched, but knew intimately, every creak, every whispered promise that filtered through its walls. "Room service," the attendant announced, his voice professional, unaware of the detonation he was about to deliver. I heard her giggle, that same laugh that once made my chest swell with pride 13 years ago at our wedding. "We didn't order anything," Jessica said, slight annoyance creeping into her tone. "Complimentary, ma'am. Happy anniversary." A beat of silence. Then more laughter, harder this time. Two voices now. "Someone's made a mistake," a male voice replied. Ethan, the name that had haunted my private investigator's reports for months. "There's no anniversary here," but the attendant insisted, as instructed. "The silver dome must be removed in their presence. Hotel policy for special deliveries." I pressed my ear harder against the wall, listening as Jessica must have relented, probably with that dismissive wave of her hand I'd seen countless times across our dining room table. "Fine, let's see what poor David sent. Probably those stupid chocolate-covered strawberries again." The lid lifted. Silence descended. And in that moment, as documents spilled across Egyptian cotton sheets in a 5-star coastal resort that had been booked solid when I suggested it for our actual anniversary, my 13-year marriage ended. Not with the bang of confrontation, but with the rustling of papers that told the whole ugly truth. 3 months earlier, I was just David Whitaker, husband, father, and the perpetual safe choice. I remember the exact moment something inside me cracked. We were having breakfast, our 2 kids shoveling cereal before school. Jessica was texting, smiling down at her phone. "Work?" I asked, sliding a lunchbox toward our youngest 5-year-old Noah. She nodded without looking up. Noah spilled his juice, and I jumped to clean it while Jessica remained fixated on her screen. As I wiped the table, I glanced at our son, really looked at him, and for the first time, allowed myself to acknowledge the doubt that had been growing for months. His eyes were green. Mine and Jessica's are brown. "You've got Grandma's eyes," I'd always told him. But that morning, with Jessica lost in her digital world, I finally admitted to myself what I'd suspected. Those weren't his grandmother's eyes. They were someone else's entirely. When she announced she needed a girls' trip for her mental health 3 days later, I nodded understandingly. I even packed her suitcase, the good one, with the expandable compartment where I slipped a small tracking device. Not because I planned to confront her, but because I needed to know if I'd been a fool all along. "Take all the time you need," I told her, kissing her cheek at the airport drop-off. "You're the best," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I don't deserve you." For once, we agreed on something. The truth arrives differently for everyone. For some, it's a lipstick stain or a forgotten text. For me, it was an Instagram post. Angela, Jessica's supposed travel companion, tagged at a rooftop bar in Nashville. Jessica had said they were headed to Denver. I sat in our bedroom that night, the house quiet except for the children's steady breathing down the hall. On my laptop, I checked the tracking app. The blinking dot placed Jessica's suitcase at the Ocean View Hotel in Malibu, the same resort I'd tried to book for our anniversary, only to be told they were completely full. "Sorry, sir, we're booked solid through summer," the reservation agent had said 6 months earlier. Perhaps next year? Yet somehow, there was Jessica, and she wasn't alone. Before confronting her, I needed certainty, not just about the affair, but about Noah. So I ordered a home paternity test. The process was simple: a cheek swab while pretending to check if he had a fever, mailed in a plain envelope. The results arrived a week later while Jessica was supposedly working late. I sat in my car in our driveway for 20 minutes after reading the clinical confirmation. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply called Mark Devons, an old college friend who'd become a private investigator. I need everything, I told him. Every meeting, every hotel, every lie. 2 months and $12,000 later, I had my dossier. Photos of Jessica and Ethan Williams, VP of marketing at her firm, entering hotels across 3 states. Credit card statements showing jewelry purchases that never made it to my wife's jewelry box. Text message transcripts revealing a 2-year affair and the secret of Noah's parentage. "He thinks the kid is his," Ethan had texted her once. "Will you ever tell him?" "Why would I?" she'd responded. "David's the perfect father. He'd raise anyone's kid without question. That's why I married him. Safe, reliable David." The words stung worse than the betrayal itself. I wasn't her love. I was her safety net. When Jessica announced her girl's trip to find herself, I knew exactly where to find her. I called the Ocean View Hotel and booked the room next to her reservation under a false name, using cash and a story about surprising my wife for our anniversary. "How romantic," the front desk clerk said, sliding me the key card. "We'll make sure not to spoil the surprise." The first night was the hardest. I sat in darkness, listening through the wall as they entered, laughing, dropping bags, opening wine. Then the sounds that followed, intimate noises I hadn't heard from Jessica in years. But it was their pillow talk afterward that truly gutted me. "When will you tell him?" Ethan asked, his voice low but audible through the surprisingly thin wall. "After this trip," Jessica sighed. "I'll say I had a revelation about my mental health or whatever. David will understand. He always does. That's his whole thing." "And Noah?" A pause. "Noah stays with me, obviously. David's not the biological father, but no judge needs to know that. We've been married 13 years. The birth certificate lists him as the father." "Won't he fight for custody?" Jessica laughed, that same dismissive laugh I'd heard directed at room service earlier. "David? Number. He'll be heartbroken but practical. He'll want what's best for the children. That's who he is, the reasonable one who never makes waves." "That's why you married him instead of me back then," Ethan said, a note of bitterness in his voice. "I was 23 and scared," she replied. "You weren't ready to settle down, and David was safe. But I've always loved you. You know that." I sat in the dark, my laptop open, finalizing the last details of a plan I'd been crafting since the paternity test results arrived. They thought they knew David Whitaker, the safe choice, the pushover, the man who'd smile through pain just to keep the peace. They were about to meet someone else entirely. The second day, I worked remotely from my hotel room while monitoring their movements through the tracking device. They spent the day at the pool, ordered room service lunch, then returned for an afternoon of intimacy, loud enough that I had to put in earphones. At 6 p.m., I made my move. I called Jessica's credit card companies, using the personal information only a husband would know, and reported the cards stolen. I digitally submitted the pre-prepared divorce papers to my lawyer with instructions to file immediately. I logged into our joint account, which I'd emptied into a separate account days earlier, leaving just enough for the minimum balance requirement. Then I made the most important call, to Melissa Williams, Ethan's wife, the lifestyle influencer with 500,000 followers who built her brand on family values and authentic living. "Mrs. Williams, we've never met, but our spouses know each other quite well. I have information you might want before I deliver some news to them tonight." Her silence on the other end told me everything. She'd suspected too. "Send me everything," she finally said, her voice terrifyingly calm. I did. At 7 p.m., I arranged for the silver tray to be delivered at 8:15, giving me enough time to check out and catch my flight home. I left a generous tip for the room service attendant with specific instructions. The tray must be opened in their presence. Then I waited by the door, luggage in hand, listening for the moment that would end one chapter of my life and begin another. What the hell is this? Ethan's voice boomed as papers scattered across the bed. Jessica! I don't understand, she stammered. I could picture her perfectly, hands shaking, eyes wide with growing horror. David can't... How did he... Are these divorce papers? And what's this about Noah? Jesus Christ, Jessica! Sir, ma'am, is everything all right? The room service attendant's concerned voice. Get out! Jessica screamed. Something crashed against a wall. I shouldered my bag and walked toward the elevator, their chaos fading behind me. In the lobby, I nodded at the front desk clerk who'd checked me in. Anniversary surprise go as planned, sir? She asked cheerfully. I smiled for the first time in months. Perfectly. As my rideshare pulled away from the hotel, my phone exploded with notifications. Jessica calling, Jessica texting, Ethan too, somehow having found my number. David, what the hell is this? Please call me now. We need to talk. This is insane. You can't do this. I switched off my phone and watched the California coastline disappear as we headed to the airport. I thought I might feel pain, regret, or at least anger. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar. Lightness. The weight of suspicion, of self-doubt, of wondering if I was paranoid. It was gone, replaced by the certainty that I was no longer the fool in someone else's story. The aftermath unfolded faster than even I had anticipated. By the time my plane landed, Melissa Williams had already posted a raw, tearful video to her Instagram, exposing her husband's infidelity without naming Jessica directly. Her followers did the detective work for her, uncovering Jessica's identity within hours. Standing in my truth, Melissa captioned the post that would eventually rack up 3 million views. Jessica returned home to find the locks changed, her belongings packed in boxes in the garage, and a formal letter from my attorney explaining that under state law, I had every right to secure the property that was legally in my name alone, thanks to the quitclaim deed she'd signed weeks earlier, thinking it was paperwork for Noah's summer camp. She screamed on our front lawn until a neighbor called the police. I watched from the window, our children at my parents' house, protected from the spectacle. Sir, your wife is claiming you tricked her into signing away her rights to the house, the responding officer said at the door. I handed him copies of the notarized documents. Officer, I'm happy to discuss this through proper legal channels. But as you can see, everything is in order. My wife and I are divorcing, and she's understandably upset. He reviewed the papers, nodded slowly. She'll need to take this up with the courts, ma'am, he told Jessica, who had mascara streaming down her face. He set me up, she screamed. He's not who you think he is. On that point, at least, she was correct. Ethan's downfall came next. Melissa's followers bombarded his company's social media accounts with comments asking how they felt about executives who destroyed families. Internal emails about his affair with a subordinate, Jessica, were anonymously leaked to HR. An ethics investigation found multiple violations of company policy. He was terminated within a week. Their grand plans collapsed like a house of cards. Ethan, facing an expensive divorce with a suddenly tarnished reputation, ghosted Jessica entirely. No more hotel rooms, no more promises. Just silence and a restraining order from Melissa. Jessica, her face now recognizable from social media and local news coverage of the influencer's revenge, as tabloids called it, found herself unemployable in our industry. Her mental health, which she'd used as an excuse for so long, actually deteriorated. She moved in with her mother, who called me repeatedly to explain what a mistake Jessica had made. She always said you were beneath her, her mother admitted during one call. I told her she was a fool. You were the best thing that ever happened to her. Thank you for saying that, I replied. But I've moved on. The custody battle was brief. Jessica's documented instability, combined with evidence of her prolonged deception, made the judge's decision straightforward. Primary custody was awarded to me, with Jessica granted supervised visitation twice monthly. At the final hearing, she approached me in the courthouse hallway, almost unrecognizable, thin, pale, with none of the confident glow she'd maintained throughout our marriage. "What about Noah?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know he's not yours. Biologically." I looked at her directly for the first time since discovering her betrayal. "He's been my son since the moment he was born. Biology doesn't change that." "You're punishing me by taking him," she accused. "I'm protecting him," I corrected. "And our daughter. From your chaos." "You planned all of this," she said, a flash of the old Jessica returning. "You were so calculated, so cold. You're not who I thought you were." I allowed myself a small smile. "That makes two of us, doesn't it?" She reached for my arm. "We could try again. For the kids. I've learned my lesson, David. I see now what I threw away." For a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. The one whose smile could light up a room, whose touch once made everything right in my world. But that woman was a mirage, an illusion I'd clung to while ignoring the truth. "Goodbye, Jessica," I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. I walked away without looking back, joining my children who waited with my parents near the elevator. "Daddy!" Noah called, running toward me with open arms, his green eyes that would always remind me of my greatest pain and my greatest triumph, shining with unconditional love. I lifted him into my arms, feeling his small hands lock around my neck with complete trust. "Ready to go home, buddy?" I asked, ruffling his hair. "Home with you," he agreed, resting his head on my shoulder. Over Noah's head, I caught a final glimpse of Jessica standing alone in the empty hallway, watching the life she'd discarded slip permanently beyond her reach. Our eyes met briefly. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, not even pity. Just the peaceful certainty that justice had been served. Then the elevator doors closed, taking me and my children toward our future. One without lies, without betrayal, without the woman who'd underestimated just how far the safe choice would go to protect what mattered most. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. The children were thriving in therapy. I'd been promoted at work. Apparently, handling personal tragedy with dignity impressed the executive team. Our new, smaller home felt more like a sanctuary than the larger house ever had. I was packing lunches one morning when Noah tugged on my sleeve. "Dad, are you happy now?" I knelt to his level, searching those green eyes that no longer triggered pain. "I am." "Are you?" He nodded solemnly. "Mom was really sad when we saw her Saturday. She cried when we left." "People cry when they regret their choices," I explained gently. "But that doesn't mean we can fix those choices for them." "Will she ever live with us again?" I shook my head. "No, buddy, but she'll always be your mom." He considered this, then wrapped his arms around my neck. "I'm glad you're my dad." "Me too," I whispered, holding him tightly. "More than anything in this world." Later that night, after the children were asleep, I sat on my porch with a glass of whiskey. My phone buzzed with a text from a woman I'd met in the parents' group at school. Our first date was scheduled for the following weekend. Looking forward to Friday. No pressure, just good conversation and maybe some laughter. I smiled and typed back, "Sounds perfect." As I set down my phone, I realized something profound. The man Jessica married, the safe choice, who'd never make waves, had drowned in the tsunami of her betrayal. But the man who emerged was stronger, wiser, more complete. I raised my glass to the night sky, toasting the silver tray that changed everything. Not just the marriage it ended, but the life it made possible. One built on truth, self-respect, and the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't rage or vengeance. It's simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.